Let's get on with personal agendas, vendettas. The longest mischief trial in Canadian history has reached its final phase now with sentencing. I think nobody was shocked that they found Tamara Lich and Chris Barber guilty, but now we're at what would be the conclusion of this, I guess, with a sentence.
Well, this is sort of over type with what we were speaking about just a moment ago about how the government is trying to manage people rather than govern. Yeah, the sentencing hearing for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber got started earlier today, and I'm going to say that how their case turns out is going to be one of those situations where in the rearview mirror, everything you need to know about who runs Canada and how it is run will be there to see. So, look, quick rundown. Let's just look back. A few months ago, Lich and Barber were found guilty of mischief on charges arising from their activities at the time of the Convoy in 2022. And the Crown is seeking a prison sentence of 7 years for Lich and 8 years for Barber. Now, this is for mischief. Mischief is kicking over outhouses and causing a ruckus in the back alley at midnight. But they charge them for mischief, and I guess the law permits sentences of this size. And Barber was also convicted of counseling others to disobey a court order, which is why they're looking for a higher sentence from him. Now, this, of course, is a little outrageous when you actually know and feel the issue. When people don't get 7 years for killing each other. We had a story just in the last week about somebody who attacked his girlfriend, stabbed her 3 times, hit her over the head with a lead pipe, and 3 years. I mean, if the government likes your point of view, you can cause all the mischief you like, and you won't get charged. So, really, what happened here was that the Convoy and all of those activities exposed the intellectual nudity of the Trudeau regime, and governments hate to be exposed like that. So they cracked down hard, and you'll remember how the bank accounts were attached and how they were listening in on the cell phones, and there was some fairly vigorous suppression of public gatherings there, people getting charged with horses and so forth and so on. But, the provincial premiers were, this was all about control. The provincial premiers were told that they wouldn't get federal money unless they cooperated with what was often a nonsensical plan. I mean, we're seeing now that vaccines were not universally safe and not universally effective, but we were told at the time, got to do this. And this, of course, was where this started. It came when truckers, very solitary occupation, being a trucker. You're in the cab, you don't have too much company. And they were advised, cross-border truckers, very late in the pandemic, that suddenly they had to be vaccinated. Well, they knew that there was no difference between a virus on the American side of the border and on the virus on the Canadian side. And they knew what we all suspected, that the vaccine didn't do anything for you. So, in short, the truckers knew that the Trudeau government's vaccine mandate for them had nothing to do with science and everything to do with politics, and so they said enough, and we all know what happened, and there won't be any apologies coming from the government either. So, look, these two people are in a very awkward spot. My guess is, if you want to guess, is that they're already found guilty. They'll be given a stiff sentence, and then as a generous act of condescension, that will be suspended or not, that they won't actually go to jail. But the message is out there: don't mess with us. We're in charge.
Yeah, I hope you're correct in that sense, and I suspect the sentence will be similar in that. I mean, they've been found guilty. That portion's done. The hearings were held. Maybe there'll be an appeal. Who knows? But now it's what will be the appropriate punishment. Both of them did, again, an excessive amount of time pre-court, without bail, for a mischief charge, and that tends to be considered triple time served. I think a judge could come in and say, don't do it again. There's your time. This is your suspended sentence. But it's what the Crown is asking for is still outrageous. Just as I was driving in this morning, I was listening about a horrific case just today in Calgary. The Crown has submitted on a case where 2 parents tortured their 18-month-old to death, and they've been convicted. The Crown is asking for 8 years. So the Crown considers that sort of crime to be on par with what Leach and Barber did. I mean, I understand the Crown can ask for whatever they like. It's up to the judge in the end. But that says a lot about how they're viewing this particular offense versus, some of the stuff I think that is almost universally people could say is horrible and deserves the full extent of the law. The other part is this, they want to make an example, but would a harsher sentence be preventative? Does it look like Barber or Leach are going to start another convoy? Does it look like they're at risk of putting the public at risk any longer? I haven't seen any indication of that. Erika, I would think the judge would take those things into account. Again, I mean, he's found them guilty, but I don't think he'll be inspired to give them an excessive incarceration or anything.
Well, I would hope not. I think the challenge we're facing right now is that this is political, and this is, I haven't been tracking, unfortunately, but the appointment of the judges is, federal. And so we've seen a big surgence of the judicial being influenced by appointments by the federal government over the last decade, even the Supreme Court, because Harper hadn't filled many of those vacancies. And so we're in a situation where the judicial system, I think, is trying to set an example by these individuals. But I mean, if you're comparing and contrasting their crime, which they've already been found guilty of, especially on the mischief file, it's like, well, what happened to all those people that ruined statues and violated public property and decided to light churches on fire, like things like that? What is their punishment? And if it's not equal to what we're seeing from Barber and Lynch, like, why is that the case, and how are the values and beliefs being penetrated to our judicial system? So that's my first concern. The second part is kind of coming back to what I was talking about with Parks Canada. It's like, does the judicial system not realize the huge impact we have on human trafficking right now, or domestic abuse? I mean, every day, even on LinkedIn, I'm seeing stories of women across Canada being killed because of the fact that we don't have harsh punishment for those dealing with domestic violence, and we don't have the right services to protect those women and children and men in some cases, or even elder abuse, right? Like, I think that this is one where it's just so political that my jaw will not drop if this sentence is higher than we think it should be. But that is completely inappropriate and completely unfounded, that it's comparing these to cases that are far, like the one you used, that are far more consequential to society. Like, I don't think they're going to get out and be the first thing they're going to do is go start another protest or convoy. Like, I think they've learned their lesson. They've served copious amounts of time, and hopefully that gets taken into consideration. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was to politicize and make an example out of these individuals. So we'll see what happens. I unfortunately don't have confidence in the judicial process, given the penetration by the government and political values being jammed down their throats. So hopefully this judge has a better conscience than the Liberal government.
You've brought that to the right point in the discussion, Erika. You're talking about the politicization of the judiciary. I had the papers put in my hands a few years ago about people who wanted to be judges. I always thought that, to be a judge, somebody tapped you on the shoulder and said, you fit. But no, you just put an application in if you're qualified at all. And so what's on the qualification form, very interesting. It's a very woke agenda that they are. So they're looking for a certain type of person who thinks a certain type of way, and neither Cory nor I would qualify, and it wouldn't purely be on our lack of legal
I might
training.
From the gender I check, but then you do a background check on me, and I don't fit a lot of their inclusive narrative.
Erika, that's your next stop on your resume. Point being, but that's
it's probably similar to the Senate application.
You just need a different prime minister, I think. But anyway, so the system is stacked, but it harks back to what we were talking about a little earlier, about the way that the government is trying to influence Canadians, who they are, what they think, what they can do. And the Convoy was a challenge to that whole way of thinking. So they are absolutely going to focus their hatred. Well, let's not beat around the bush. They
Yeah.
don't like Leach and Barber. They're going to focus that on those two individuals as a
Mhm.
warning to everybody else. And you know what the proof of this is going to be? One of our columnists pointed this out yesterday. He said, in the West, Leach and Barber will be heroes. In the East, they will be widely and universally disparaged.
Well, and I mean,
And
you
that
know,
our
this-
democracy might not be a democracy, but a dictatorship. Maybe that might be an undertone.
well, and just to look from, to close it off, like from political motive, if that's indeed the thing, I would think politically the Liberals, especially with a new prime minister, just want to put this one to bed. It's been years. Give them a suspended sentence, get it off the docket, and stop people from hearing about it. But if they give them time in federal prison, they're going to reignite this.
Yes.
And they're going to martyr them. And it's not going to have the effect of calming the protests. It might spawn a whole new one. And I just think if the judge is looking from that perspective too, everybody's just kind of better off by getting this thing finished and into the history books rather than a current problem. But
Yeah.
we'll see. Nothing surprises in this country anymore.